A drone is an unmanned aircraft or ship guided by a remote control or onboard computers, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary. The problem with drones is that there is an increase of them, which actually reduces the amount of on-ground combat in war. The sides that support drones to keep them in the use of war is that they keep soldiers on ground combat safe, which in turn obviously saves more soldiers' lives. About 30% of military leaders estimate that within a year or so, the number of Air Force pilots flying unmanned planes like drones will be higher than those who actually leave the ground. Also, the aspect of not having soldiers on grounds, things like the harsh environment that they experience, IEDs that they could encounter, snipers, etc. Drones will eliminate the risk of that happening for them. So it would be less common for boots on the ground missions. Another positive aspect of using drones in the war is that they're actually significantly cheaper than on-ground or aerial combat. The drone program only is about 1% of the entire annual military budget, as compared to the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program alone just costs the United States $9.7 billion a year. Also, if a U.S. manned military attack aircraft costs about $18,000 to $169,000 per hour to operate, which is about 42 times more expensive than an attack drone. Another positive aspect about drones is that drone pilots have a lower risk for post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, than those pilots who are actually used of manned aircrafts and other battlefield soldiers as well. So not having actual contact on the field or live battlefield, and they can live a normal citizen life, and they're not risking their own life, only about 4% of active duty drone pilots are at risk for PTSD, as compared to the average soldier returning from Iraq or Afghanistan, who currently has 12 to 17% risk of PTSD. So even though these are all...
Did you say that?
Sure. So about 12 to 17 of soldiers returning from Iraq and Afghanistan are at high risk for PTSD. So even though these are all very positive things, they save our soldiers, there's a huge impact on using drones. So for example, drones kill large numbers of civilians and really traumatize the local populations. Yes, it's safe, but there aren't any laws or rules for civilians where drones will attack them or how things will work. But the government has actually given little to no attention to the civilian populations affected, which I think is a huge part that needs to be recognized. So the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, which is a non-for-profit organization in London, published figures that gave a sense of the scale for the U.S. operations. So for example, between 2004 and 2012, in Pakistan, they were striked 330 times, which killed a total number of people between 2,500 and 3,180 people within those drone attacks. So statistically, the world has seen really numerous number of civilian casualties from drone strikes, which depicts much more of a dehumanizing war. It kind of goes for like the PlayStation mentality, where the drone operators just tend to regard their actions as it's just a regular computer game. The drone strikes also allowed the U.S. to become more emotionally disconnected from the horrors of war. The drones, because it's easy, it's risk-free, there are less concerns that armed forces will stretch the interpretation of the international law of humanitarians too far. So according to Keith Shurtleff, he's a U.S. Army chaplain and ethics instructor, he said that soldiers are physically and psychologically removed from the horrors of battle and see the enemy not as humans, but as blips on a screen. So there's a danger of losing the deterrent to war that the horrors normally do provide. One drone pilot, Colonel D. Scott Brenton, in his interview with the New York Times in July of 2012, said that it's a tele-war with a joystick and a throttle. He's thousands of miles away from the battlefield, drives home, and has dinner with his family. He said, I have no emotional attachment to the enemy. I have a duty, I execute it, and no one in my immediate environment is aware of anything that just occurred. So it's the drone pilot is basing the attack solely off of numbers and data. It's not, which in turn, they say it's more of an ethical decision, but there's actually no proof to back that up. And currently they're looking for drone pilots who grew up playing computer games and look for those who have experience using video games and playing those kinds of games so that they don't really experience that physical side of war ever. They're often working from faraway locations away from conflict, and the blurry lines between the virtual world and the destruction that it operates really causes a big question about drone operators and the ability to distinguish between a game and reality. So my opinion on this is that I think no matter what, as we head into the future, there will be the use of drones. No matter what happens, I don't think banning them will help anything, but the fact that they need to update humanitarian laws and keep a more accurate depiction of who is getting bombed and what the reasons to use drones, so that our laws are updated up to our technology, which obviously is a process, but I think that that's going to be most important as we move forward in this technological world that we live in.